Now the problem is the churn is here. These unprecedented social conditions of division and distrust are here in our cities, in our communities, in our election system, where people will unfriend each other over a candidate. You know, high school friends that have been friends for 5 decades will unfriend each other on social media and never speak to each other again, and catastrophize, you know, the outcome of an election to the point that they would end a friendship. And we've normalized it. Now it's a verb. I'm going to unfriend you, right? Like you and I did that when we were kids, but I would play with you the next day, right?
Yeah.
But now it's become this normalized verb. And that's a leadership problem. You know, leadership is the management of energy, yours and those around you, and how you manage your energy and how you connect with other humans is everything. And I think we've lost the ability to make human connection in a meaningful way. And if we don't get that back, I think it spells disaster for our civil society, not just in our bottom line, but in how we actually can govern ourselves.
We've come to a point where we can't find mutual agreement through disagreement, if that makes sense.
Civil discourse.
I've got to, and for me to be right, you got to be wrong.
Yeah.
And there cannot be any sort of other way to look at it. We can't sit down and say, look, you know, I don't agree with you. These are the reasons why, but let's find some common ground. Or maybe we're just going to agree to disagree on this point, but later on down the road, you're going to have to help me. You know, I had a chance couple of years ago now on the show to talk to Newt Gingrich,
right?
And that was and also Patrick Murphy,
yeah,
former Secretary of the Army and Congressman, and those are conversations that we had there, which was, you know, we used to live in a world where the two sides of the aisle could come together, and they could sit down and say, okay, we're going to find a resolution, even though we may not agree.
Yeah.
And we seem to have lost so much of that, and it's become this polarizing effect. One of the things you bring up in the book, rightly so, I believe, is that we as people emulate leadership.
Yeah.
Well, our elected leaders are the people that we see every day as society.
Right.
And now when they're out there fighting, arguing, not getting along, creating this example for us as adults and our children, we're all subject to that behavior.
Yeah, I refer to them as divisionists, and I don't even think that's an actual word, but I
like it.
But I think it works in describing this because, again, this perfect storm of the churn that we have. You have this reality that, you know, humans are like all mammals. We form in-groups and out-groups. That's what we do. And when we're afraid, we get even more inclusive, or we draw back into those groups. The people that look like us, think like us, vote like us. It's just what we do. But in America, one of the things that has made this civil society different, you know, Robert Putnam says that this is a society of bridging trust. We have this ability to bridge beyond our in-groups and bridge into other out-groups. And that's been the social capital that's kept the secret sauce, that's kept this country strong, that makes businesses high performing. But what's happened in the last 5 to 10 years is you've seen a downslide away from that bridging trust back into what bonding trust, where you only trust the people in your in-group. You only trust the people in your tribe or your party. And the leaders of this country at the institutional level have always been the vanguards of bridging trust, because it's not a state of nature that occurs normally. Like you have to put that in place.
Yeah.
Well, they've opted instead for this divisionism, where they foment division between in-groups and out-groups in favor of a narrow agenda rather than doing the more uncomfortable thing, which is to bridge us together. When's the last time you heard a politician or a policymaker actually talk about connecting and bridging as Americans? You don't hear it anymore. It's not even in the language. It's not even in the grammar. So if those divisionists are doing that, then yes, we mirror that at a community level, and it's a very, very scary outcome.
Well, how would you get the likes?
Exactly. And that's the trends. That's the tip of the iceberg piece, right? We start to think about and assess our relevance in the world based on how we are perceived, not in the natural world, but in a represented reality, right? How am I perceived here?
Yeah.
And that's not even the natural world. So it causes us to be performative in how we operate. There's filters all the way through, right? It's duck lips and selfies. And that is not how we actually operate with each other as humans, and which means our social skills atrophy.
Well, and you end up in a state, too, where you begin to judge almost your self-worth by what an algorithm is telling you.
Yeah.
Right? And we forget that this is still kind of a machine, and this algorithm is looking for certain things that may be pushing it out to people or not. And that's actually what's judging you. And then you're looking at it going, well, I only got 5 likes. I only got so many impressions of this thing. Therefore, I suck. I'm not good.
Yeah. Yeah. I go into this deep on the book, and I hope people will check it out, because there's a level of entanglement that we have with digital technology, particularly mobile technology. And before we get into the AI realm fully, we need to get a better sense of the human operating system and just how ancient and primal it is, and how ill-equipped it is to actually deal with this rapidly advancing technology. We need to really get clear on that. And I hope people will check that out, man, because like what you're talking about, the way we assess our relevance in the world based on an algorithm, it's a very dangerous way to navigate the world.
Yeah. I want to ask about what do we actually do?
Right.
So once we've identified it, which you talk about in the book is the very first step, we've got to identify that this is the situation we're in.
Yeah.
Once we do that, now we got to get messy.
Got to get messy, and that's getting below the waterline of that. If the iceberg is that metaphor for the human operating system, the tip of the iceberg is the modern world. Below the waterline is the traditional world. It's where we all come from. It's hunters and gatherers, and it turns out that we are just well-dressed Neanderthals, man. I mean, we are still just as primal as we were 250,000 years ago. We still navigate the world the same way. The brain, our biology really hasn't changed, but we've disconnected from that primal reality. In other words, what's below the waterline is invisible to us. So we got to get below the waterline, and we got to realize that it's kind of a messy creature that lives down there. And the acronym that I use for that is meaning-seeking, emotional, social storyteller who struggles. And if you start to look at yourself and those around you through that lens, it can give you levers and tools to actually have more authentic influence in that world over there.